Item number SCP-140, classified as Getter. "140" is a modern hard copy book with an unremarkable black binding and an unknown number of white pages. The book jacket is missing, but the title, A Chronicle of the Devas, is clearly legible. The inside cover is signed by the author, whose name is indecipherable. The text is copyrighted in the 1900s. Careful examination reveals there are far more pages between the bindings than could be contained within them. Readers admit to feelings of paranoia, unease, and occasional nausea while reading 140. Although this may be related to the subject material. Nonetheless, readers almost universally describe 140 as fascinating and express continued interest despite its frequently unsettling content. 1 in 15 readers describe 140 as having a faint odor of dried blood. "140" is a detailed account of an ancient civilization originating in what is now south-central Siberia, identified as the Davites. Although, like all cultures, the Davites evolved and changed over time, they appear to have exhibited unusual continuity. Universal fixtures of the Davites' culture in all periods include militarism, conquest, ancestor worship, urban centers ruling over large slave populations, gruesome Davites were a collection of city-states. They appear to have consistently returned to imperialism under a theocratic aristocracy. The Deva, practitioners of cannibalism and thaumaturgy. Although initially, Foundation researchers believed the Deva to have been a hereditary class, recycling the names of noteworthy individuals. Evidence and events now suggest that the Deva possessed preternatural longevity. Several researchers have concluded the Deva were so divergent from modern humans as to be a separate subspecies, a conclusion supported by graphic representation within 140. 140 is remarkably detailed by the standards of a primary source, seeming closer to a biography than a historic text. It includes lurid descriptions of sacrificial rites, battlefield descriptions, daily life, and the life stories of various noteworthy individuals, including quotes and dates of birth. Over time, distinct individuals have been identified, including the individual presently termed 140-A, of which only a handful are accounted for by recorded deaths. Foundation archaeologists have discovered several sites containing ruins consistent with the supposed Davite culture in various locations across Siberia, northern Iran, and Mongolia. Artifacts and traces of intercultural conflict and contact have been discovered as far west as the Carpathian Mountains and as far east as northern Pakistan and China. Was originally found in the office of a deceased historian. The previous owner was discovered in his office at a university, having expired from self-inflicted lacerations on both wrists. There were no traces of their blood in the office. Their colleagues claimed during interviews that they discovered a note in faded ink in this person's handwriting next to 140. All witnesses were administered Class A amnesics and false memories implanted. The note read, "I have to know. I'm sorry." All texts within 15 meters, except several books relating to the history of the region, were blank. The remaining books now include accounts of supposed interactions between the Davite civilization and the subject cultures or applicable discussions of Davite history and culture. These texts were confiscated. All prints, forms, and media were blank. was also found in the deceased's journal, found on his home PC, indicating that upon his initial reading of 140, it ended with the almost utter destruction of the Daevite civilization and the genocide of all known Deva. In an unknown year in BCE, by the forces of Chinese General Qin Gui. As a result of the subsequent containment breaches, including those detailed in the journal, copious quantities of new material have been added, describing survivors regrouping and migrating to another region of central Siberia, rebuilding their empire steadily and continuing to advance culturally and technologically. At present, the empire is described as having finally been crushed by Genghis Khan during the early periods of his conquests, although the fates of many important persons in several cities remain ambiguous. Foundation archaeologists will be dispatched for investigation and research. Lastly, on file, before the special containment procedures, is the description of an incident. After the incident, on an undisclosed date, at a dig site resulting in many casualties, all Foundation archaeologists excavating sites of suspected Daevite artifacts or ruins are to be accompanied by a fully armed security team. It should be noted that 140-1 has been neutralized. However, -2 remains at large. All other anomalous contacts and artifacts were destroyed when the dig site was struck by a cruise missile. The agent on site received accommodation and was treated for post-traumatic stress disorder. The doctor on site received a posthumous commendation for courage. An investigation into the possible involvement of -8 or their agents in the events of this incident are ongoing. And with that, we will move to conclude this file at current date with the special containment procedures in place. 140 must never be brought closer than 15 meters to any source of standard ink, human blood, or other fluid suitable for writing. Any contamination by blood or ink must be reported immediately. Any remaining copies of 140 created during the initial printing must be found and destroyed as soon as possible. Only 140 is to be preserved for purposes of study, early warning, and cataloging, and recording possible SCPs derived from its subject matter. 140 is contained at Site 76 in a sealed vault containing a single desk. At this time, no research is to be carried out upon the original 140. Researchers are to read from prepared copies, not bearing the signature of its author, which lack its properties. In the event of approved research, 140 may not be removed from the vault. Access requires written approval from the head researcher for the explicit purposes of testing. An armed guard stationed outside the vault will meet any attempted theft with deadly force. Should any personnel begin displaying obsession with 140 or signs of mimetic contamination, they are to be issued a Class A amnesic, false memories implanted as necessary, and transferred to another project. Transferred personnel must be monitored for signs of relapse. And with that, we have concluded this file. We will now move on to our second file for today's audio. Item number SCP-141, classified as safe. 141 is a small leather-bound codex dating back to Roman times, easily carried in one hand. Despite its great age, it never acquires any additional signs of wear and tear beyond a somewhat aged-looking cover. Its thin papyrus pages are always crisp, and so far have proven difficult to tear from the codex's binding. All attempts at radiocarbon dating have failed. The judgment of 141 as being Roman in origin was initially based upon its appearance, but later confirmed through extensive research using 141, corroborated by historical records. The title is apparently Codex Damnatio, based upon the text on its spine. 141's pages are written in Roman Republic era Latin. It is a detailed description of notes and summations for a wide range of legal trials. This first half contains a series of historic trials from throughout history. The earliest trial appears to be from the proscriptions of the late Roman Republic, while the most recent case has taken place in the 2000s. Each case summary is extensive with precise witness quotations, exact physical descriptions of evidence and their importance to the case, and so on. The Codex actually contains far more legal cases than its 150 pages could possibly allow. A reader must make a detailed reference to a range or specific case to discover if it is listed inside. If it is, the pages will transform into those relating to the specified case. This requires specific mentions of historical context surrounding the cases. Research with 141 conducted by a professor revealed 141 has apparently been employed in, among other important periods, a wide variety of Roman proscriptions, heretical trials of the Catholic Church, the Spanish this information is provided to 141, the particulars of the case described in 141 appear to become true in regards to memory and evidence surrounding the case. Witnesses' memories and testimony will correspond to the information written in 141. Falsified evidence springs into existence in accordance with its description, usually appearing in the court record or the crime scene where it can be easily discovered. This has included murder weapons, suspicious traces of the subject, such as fluids or fingerprints, stolen items, or incriminating documents. 141 appears able to cause criminal activities that would not have taken place, although this requires even more precise wording and description of the particulars. The guilty party specified by 141 may have a false memory implanted that corresponds with 141's account of events. Although this result requires a clever description of the desired scenario, these memories do not overwrite the original ones, but they do seem quite nearly as real. Care must be taken by all users to ensure as many loopholes are closed as possible. 141's falsifications will stand up to all but the most critical of examinations, but it will only produce precisely the memories and evidence written inside it. While it appears to prejudice the court against the guilty party, this is not foolproof. Nonetheless, successfully employed, 141 is an almost surefire conviction. Even in the event of exoneration, guilty subjects will often still be ostracized and viewed as guilty by influenced witnesses and law enforcement personnel. Tests are ongoing to determine if 141 is capable of exonerating an innocent man wrongly convicted, or if changing the results during the trial has any measurable effect. Approval to employ 141 in a test case is pending. However, following a certain incident, all test cases involving Foundation disciplinary hearings or implicating members of the Foundation other than D-Class personnel without signed waivers from the guilty subject are hereby forbidden by O5 Council. Violation of this new security protocol shall be dealt with harshly. We will now conclude today's audio with the special containment procedures in place. When not in use, 141 is to be stored inside a locked safe in Site 76. Access to